So, okay. So Henning has introduced the idea of game metrics more generally right now, as of now, and now we're coming back to your specific paper. And now you kind of can lead the discussion in a way, how you want to, address it. Do you want to answer some questions, or perhaps introduce the paper and what you think about it? Ideally, share your opinion about the paper and why, of course. It's always about argumentation. The entire master thesis will be about argumentation in the end. And then we can open up the quorum and see what other people have to say and what they thought about the paper, right? So I think that would be a general pathway we have exercised in the past for the specific paper in particular. So is that workable for you?
Yeah.
Cool. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. About the gamification features. Are these features good enough to keep engagement of the user? I think it's a bit much, maybe. Like the distraction reduction alerts. They will be kind of annoying if you keep ringing all the time without not looking at it. Random encouragement. The user knows it's just a computer popping up random, so it doesn't actually help. It doesn't come from a person to create better engagement, better feeling. The daily login reward. People can just log in and unfinished log out to get it. It would be better to adjust it to have it set to like do one task, 2 tasks, or have a set time amount before you get it. If you have a time instead of number of tasks, then it would be more equal for persons that are doing harder tasks or not at the same level. They will use the same amount of time if they use 2 or 3 tasks. Are these metrics good enough to see if the engagement will be increased by the metrics? Kind of hard to.
Did the paper draw any conclusions about this?
Paper, I think the execution of it was a bit small. They only tested one metric or one. They had people locked in a room for 30 minutes to test it, and that's not exactly a natural environment for this kind of testing. The person would obviously sit there for 30 minutes doing these tests. They had like only the proactive feedback or tips appreciation metric. And most of the others they didn't have any calculations for because they were just in a room. So I think they should at least have say like you have 2 weeks to play around with this and see if you like it. They could gauge the metrics of gamification features based on that much better than just having 30 minutes supervised in a room. So I would say more fake, phony results.
Do you recall the sample size? How many users they had?
36.
What about that?
36 students.
What about this in terms of what can you say about the sample size and characteristics in terms of relevance?
I think we've gotten everyone from one entire class and not representatives of the whole school.
Yep, that's probably true.
And it could have people who like to take these tests because you want other people also that other kinds of personalities, not just the ones who would like to do this kind of testing.
Yeah, it could be a disciplinary self-selection bias, right? For example, computer scientists are more likely to deal with computer stuff in the widest sense, right, than other disciplines. Yep, that's right. Good point. Other concerns? Demographics, for example?
We don't know anything about these participants. Basically, we know there are statistics. They are between 16 and 18 years old.
So we know something.
We know something. And they are working in high school math. But apart from that, well, they say that some are male, some are female. We don't know in which proportion, so we don't know if it's representative of anything.
Yeah.
We don't know if they decided to do it or if they were forced by their teachers.
I think that paper was written in Britain, and they're usually good on ethics approvals there. So I don't think you get a 16-year-old to do something without consent. Yeah,
I would say they might have consented, but not been happy to do it.
Yeah, of course. That's right. So,
well, I mean, it might have been one class or several, maybe from several schools. We have no idea. So we know that this is something on some people. I have no idea if it's representative of anything.
Yeah. So did the authors comment on that? Demographics?
Yeah, sort of. They said that it's a small demographic, well, not demographic, but the size of that sample. That some other testing to be done on a bigger, longitudinal study to be done to test.
So they're aware of their shortcomings in a way, right? So,
yes.
So what do you think the major contribution of this paper supposedly is?
It's that's framework they proposed. The MFC, Metrics Feedback Cycle, is probably the largest.
And what do you think about this thing, or US in general as a plural?
I think it's interesting way to try and put down a proper standard for doing game-based metrics.
Yeah.
I think we should probably get more papers that explore the effectiveness of this model, but it's a good start, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Henning, what was your impression? I'm not sure if you heard the feedback right now.
Just same as normal development. You take user feedback and you do iterative development.
Yeah.
These things. That's how we do it at work.
Yeah, I understand. So and we're looking at but you know, as academics we are tempted to have very simplified representations of, you know, complex processes in a way. And when I looked at this thing, what if you are having a kind of a software development background, what did it remind you of? Apart from software development per se, but
the agile methodology.
Yeah, agile is one angle, yeah, and more specifically in another area, software quality. So for me, it totally reminded me of test-driven development, right? Yeah. So you have a metric, you basically write the test, then you implement the feature, then you test the feature against the test and refine the test, right? Or the metric, right? I'm not sure. Did anyone see that same TDD kind of link?
Makes sense. Yeah.
So it's kind of really, really similar. It's one-to-one actually, right? But simpler. TDD is slightly more complex. So that was one thing. But so I share Glenn's view, however. There is something there, but there needs to be more study on that one, right? So it's just generic approach, but I think there could be something they could refine with respect to metrics. Good. Well, yeah, there's too little to say about it, I guess. Similar, simply. What in terms of their review on metrics in general? Is there any comments you can make? Because the metrics you listed, which are of course explored here in their actual in their evaluation, I guess, they are fairly yeah, you know, it's a list of individual features, but in terms of a high-level overview, do you see some contribution on the paper there, like a high-level structure of different metrics that you could use? Open one, add one. Well, they kind of attempt it, right? So in chapter or in a theoretical background, right, to some extent. Is there anything meaningful you get out of it? Anyone? That's about the serious game of education. Unless I give you points, I will not get answers. Alignment problem. No, but more seriously, is there any you know, added value you get? Because one of the things is also, you as a developer, when you read those papers, you want to think, okay, what do I learn, right? I don't want to learn about your 36 kits. I don't want to learn about your very specific metrics that you have with respect to, you know, tips generation, which is all clever stuff and so on. It gives me perhaps some inspiration. But what's the bigger picture? If I have a totally unrelated game I want to develop, can I still take something away from it? That's generally a question I have to papers. And do you see anything there? Is there anything for you that you haven't known before, or that helps you structure what you have known before?
Well, I think it's a pretty good summary of what we had in class.
Right. Okay.
And it's just clear, and they have examples in their background, the theoretical background. They give examples of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And this I find is very nice. I like the table. The different...
Table 1, you mean?
Table 1 and...
Table 2?
And table 2.
Mm-hmm.
In the engagement metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are pretty clear. It's easy to just, when you're developing something, if you want to check whether you have everything you want, it's easy to have a list and check, do I want some leaderboard or points? Yes, no, because motivation interaction. Do I want leveling system? Yes, no.
Exactly, right? So that's really nice. Do you think that's link between the theoretical background, table 1, if you like, and the table 2 has been drawn properly? Henning? What's your impression? Or anyone really? It's an open question, all the questions are open. Even though only 3 of you actually talk to me. Not so I should talk as well. What? Just mucking around. Well, so here's my take on it. Any views? So perhaps a view that I have. So when I read this paper, I want to see, and they do it to some extent, but I'm not convinced they do it complete extent. You have a theoretical background when you come up with a structure like this, right, which has some value. I wanted to see this thing used in a way, right? So how does that link to table 2, right? So any of the 8 metrics, or how many there are? 7 metrics, I believe. So that we have here, right? So how does metric 1, for example, fit into that table, or doesn't it fit? Or do we need a new category, right? Consistency. Do we actually enrich the literature? Do we learn something? Do we structure our insights based on existing literature, right? How do we relate? For me, that's okay. It's a synthesis of the literature, but I want to see that used. Otherwise, that's your, like, if you write your thesis and chapter 2 is unrelated to chapter 3, where you introduce what you're actually doing, you're kind of screwed, right? So cohesion. And particularly for papers, that's quite important. Some of it is there. For example, the leveling system, very explicit even. In fact, slightly too explicit with the Fibonacci leveling system compared to everything else. Okay, now show me some equations. That makes sense, of course, that's linked back. The rest, I'm not 100% sure. Perhaps you guys see that better than I do. that may well be the case. Henning, for example. But so that's the critique I could introduce there. On the other hand, I agree with you. If you want to replicate your study, I think that's feasible, right? So the checkbox and the description as far as available is reasonably clear. They didn't have any hard metrics, it seems. Did we see any concrete results? Did we see? Yeah, bit stuff, right? Yeah. I mean, there is some sort of tentative pie chart analysis in a way, but I wouldn't call that a hard, statistical treatment, if you like. So, meaning we have an intuition which direction I want to take, and I think it's also in a way good that they don't do a thorough statistical treatment because the sample size just doesn't warrant it, right? So, and then the biases that we have already discussed. So, that gives the an illusion of academic rigor, which is simply not there in the whole methodological design, right? You compensate by statistics, So we saw that in the other papers, they have like appendices of statistics going on, right? Without actually asking the question, are we measuring the right thing on the right people, right? But we just describe our measures. So it's actually a bit more honest to do it this way when you just don't have that much to say, right? So that's one reason. One other thing I was thinking about, and I'm not sure if you agree, so every time I read those papers, I want to structure them even worse, even more high level. So we have table 1. We have leaderboards, points, badges, achievements, leveling system, feedback. And is there any way that those could be structured even better? Do you see anything? It reads a bit like a flat list, right? So with leaders and boards, okay, how's it different from badges and achievements, leveling? So they do actually I think what they do quite well is try to structure it out, right? They call the first thing people fun, okay? And then we have badges of season, which is like easy fun, okay? And then leveling system is hard fun, and feedback, which is easy fun again, right? So, and I'm wondering if they have a hidden second dimension here that they haven't unleashed, because they have the dimension, of course, easy and hard. But I think there could also be a stratification into social or individual. Because, for example, if you have leaderboard on points, it's an implicit social activity, right? Because you're comparing yourself to someone else, right? So it would be I see it as a hard social, right? Or right, as opposed to easy social, right? Whereas if you look at the feedback, for example, when users receive feedback, their engagement increases and so on. That could be an easy social one, because it's very qualitative, right? Because it helps you to make you individually better in a way, compared even to someone else, but not hard in terms of metrics, right? You don't know you're suddenly upgraded to level 5 as opposed to 4, and your competitor is level 4, so you suddenly have this hard competitive perspective. I'm not sure if you share that perspective. But I think some of the metrics are better, so that would help you for design, as a designer, saying, okay, all right, I'm designing a game where an individual only assesses itself, himself, herself, whatever, this whole thing. Which metrics apply? Well, competitive metrics, probably not if it's an individual system, right? Whereas if you look at the social system, you look at the complementary other metrics, right? So in my view, that would help structure those techniques even a bit more to see, and then you could model it, for example, as a decision tree, in a say, right? Social, non-social, and then you have the options left and right, easy or hard, right? So if you see that structure a bit emerging, then you have much more richer decision-making support as a designer that you get out of this paper. And I think this is a bit of a missed opportunity. And if they would to apply this to their own things as well, it's telling me which category does it fit in, and how, or is there a new category they came up with? Cool. Where is all that, right? So I'm always a bit wary of flat lists. Right, so so I want to see more structure there, because otherwise, that could be naive. Okay, I had this idea, this idea, this idea. Let's put it in a list, explain it to someone, and see how it works. Right? You get away with this often, but consistency, and structure is one of the other aspects as well, because only that will help you in design. That's at least my perspective, because you can generalize and then apply it to a different problem, and have a specific application again. Otherwise, it's just a pool of different ideas, and you can probably apply or not, but it's not systematic, right? So the application. anyway, that was my take on it.
I really like them to expand, kind of expand on what you were saying, to include player types. You know,
Right,
explorer,
nice.
competitor,
Also good.
achiever, and the last one I don't really remember.
Yeah, I know what you mean. So that is cool. That's a good idea. In fact, that's entirely right. That comes back to you, Henning, as well, that you mentioned earlier in the psychological tests, right? So that is inherently important for metrics to get the right metrics for the right people, right? Still there?
Yeah.
Ah, good. Whew. I don't trust technology, you notice that. So that would be also a popular extension that could be discussed as a shortcoming of the paper. So Glenn said that just now player persona, the player persona in the widest sense should be considered as well, right? Is there anything of that nature or any shortcoming that you discovered when reading the paper? Any other shortcoming of course? You were alluding to the lack of practical, lack of realism, right? So it doesn't reflect the test environment, didn't reflect the real environment with a weird 30 minutes locked into a room kind of thing, as opposed to having an involuntary, especially if you think about, what is that metric, return rate or whatever that was, the metric for coming back, return visits, there you go. Within 30 minutes in a locked room, that's kind of semi-enforced, right? Whereas in an open environment over a week, for example, they need to do their homework in the system, right? That would be much more meaningful to figure out, okay, are they procrastinating and avoiding it? Or they're actually genuinely, using it even in their leisure time? Because then you can also correlate it with people's assumed leisure time as opposed to so play versus work, where people actually hang out. And if you see them after 8 o'clock dealing with the system, well, that's usually playtime, then it means they're actually kind of interested, right? So there's again this persona type into it. But also perhaps temporal structure or aspects could be considered. Any other ways? Any other? So we had some good about the paper, definitely. So it's like a good starting point of something. But of course, a lot of room for improvement, right? So in this. Other views? No? So, for your paper in particular, right, Henning? Do you have any question regarding for example, also the report? Is there? Do you get anything away from this out of this discussion for preparing your report?
Yeah, I hear different.
Right. So, I mean, that should inspire you to.
That I didn't think of.
That should inspire you to discuss those, right? You can, and the point is, it's all about you forming. Right now, I'm using the opportunity to talk to you because otherwise we don't have that. It's an opportunity for you to form an opinion, right? So it doesn't mean you adopt our opinion and say, yeah, cool, that's all cool sounds. You can also, inherently dismiss that, but at least those are positions that could be argued or dismissed at least systematically. That's what those discussions are about. It's not necessarily priming you or saying you what's right or wrong. It's just throwing out ideas, exactly like you said. On conversely, you threw an interesting idea out as well, which I hadn't seen there, which I agree totally. Is like the lack of realism in the test setup. It's nice to have controlled environments for experimenter. Beautiful, constrained time, constrained room, no confounding influences. But yeah, bad luck. That's not going to happen, right? So I mean, anyone who has remotely used the internet before knows that that's not how the usage patterns work. 13 minutes in one spot, and then yeah. So that's also very good discussion and injection. So, but you can build on this and see if you can expand on it. What I would like to see from your report in particular, if you can structure game metrics to some extent, right? So similar, what perhaps in a decision tree form or whatever other way or tabular form, it's up to you. In a way so that we can actually, the reader can take away what metrics are out there, what types of metrics, you alluded to it in your presentation, what types of metrics are out there, and then some selective examples of those ones, because that would really be meaningful as a survey paper, as a review paper. And so there's quite a bit of literature out of there, and I have the impression that you read quite a lot already as well, especially thinking about rehabilitation, cognitive perspective, the motor abilities perspective, and so on. And if there's an opportunity to structure that and lay it out for the reader, that would be really good, I think, in your particular case. So make it focus more on what metrics are out there, how can we apply them, right? So as opposed to getting lost in this very specific paper. Yeah? Cool. Okay. Any other comments of anyone? The thing is about metrics is sometimes I'm wondering if that should be, I mean, that's one of the more important talks because it really highlights what the, you know, from an implementation point of view, from a design point of view, is quite essential. The problem is it's inherently interdisciplinary. So I see the relationship to cognitive abilities, meaning the talk we had last week, it was full of metrics, the whole thing. In fact, if you look at the psych test, you want to have a look at Marcus' paper as well, because there was a good selection of different psychological tests. 11 or something they listed out. Then there's the thing about tech, right? So because what you can measure depends what you can sense ultimately, right? So both in terms of sensitivity, but also the kind of metrics you can receive, right? So so basically you can pretty much walk through all the past talks and use that as an inspiration for you, so you can cheat a bit and see, okay, what kind of metrics did relate to that particular talk, right? So for you there's an opportunity, but also a bit of a challenge to keep it contained, right? To keep it within the space limit, because that's easy to spread out. So just to bear that in mind. So it's slightly different from some of the other talks, which are more focused on their particular subdomain. Yours is kind of more like a cross-cutting concern, if you like, right? So a bit like testing or logging and software development, right? So it's not just in one area, it's everywhere, right? So that's kind of metaphor. Cool. Right. Any more ideas you have want to discuss, or thoughts or questions? Now's the time.
I do not have any.
Good. You guys? No more comments? Okay. Everyone gave up? So sad. Okay. No, they're still alive. I'm just mucking around. Cool. Okay, I think there's a little reason for keeping you longer. I suspect you need to work. So appreciating that you took the time. It would be great if you could upload your slide set to the wiki, or link it to the wiki, so we can review that and hopefully read it. No, I think we got the essence, but it would be good for consistency to have it there. And in case you have more questions regarding the talk or the discussion here, then you just get in touch, of course, right? Cool. Other than that, I thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Hadef.